Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're going to talk about what happened in the third week of Planetary Qualifiers for Set 5. So, moving on directly to the sponsor of this video, which is Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. So, first of all, I want of course to talk about the meta breakdown. This time I'm using SW Meta in order to get information. This is a very nice website that you should check out. I'll put the description in, put the link in the description. Sorry. And here above you are seeing all decks that have won this week, the last weekend. Sorry. So we can see that we have 5 Quinnland Voss Red Tarkintown who've won a PQ, and then coming out second we have 3 Data Vault Boba Fett deck. That's a lot. For it's the most success Boba 4 ever had. The deck is definitely coming in full force in this third week of PQ. We'll see if this lasts. Then we got some Kura having success. 2 Palpatine Yellow is also having some really good success. I think that the big takeaway here from this winner list is that you see there's not a single aggro deck, not a single Sabine. Talzin is kind of a tempo deck, and all the other decks are basically just mid-range deck. So we got Kylo Ren as the combo deck, and then Yoda is also a control deck. Luke Skywalker control deck, Anakin mid-range, Han Solo green mid-range, Admiral Ackbar. Not a single. It's also the first week where we don't have a single Han Solo blue force in the top in winning the event. We saw that a few of them made top 8, but not a single one of them managed to win, which is a big deal. And we also have Ackbar getting itself another PQ win with Data Vault, which is really, really nice to see. So we also see Luke Skywalker Data Vault having some success as well. So a very, very healthy breakdown of the event deck. And Palpatine Yellow is really doing well. But if nobody plays aggro, Palpatine Yellow is obviously a great choice. So let's take a look now at the top 8 performance. And as you can see here, even if you look at the wider thing, we have Quinnland Voss, Boba Fett, Han Solo Blue, Darth Vader. As far as Darth Vader, excepted Darth Vader Yellow, there's not really any aggro deck in this. And then you have to get all the way down to Sabine in the top 5 Sabine ECL to see some aggro decks. So in this environment, it does make sense to be bringing up and doing really well with Vader, with Palpatine. You can really, there's just not that many aggro deck, at least in the third week of the PQ. There's just not that many aggro decks. The space aggro decks have mostly kind of disappeared. What is, they're not as prevalent as they were, and Sabine is also not super well represented. So the only exception is Vader Yellow, who is basically remaining here. But you can see Han Solo Blue Force still very much a force to be reckoned with in the meta, but definitely on the back foot. It is no longer the best deck in the set right now. And it has been the case for a couple of weeks. And for this week, Boba Data Vault has really rise up to the top. This is an amazing week for Boba Data Vault. And we're also having a Boba regular green also doing well, and the Boba, also one Boba yellow making top 8. So it's actually 18 top 8 performance here for Boba 4, which is a huge amount of. So other than this, all those interesting takes, we got Luke Skywalker 5 Luke Data Vault making top 5. That's an aggro space deck, and we saw 3 Han Solo Tarkintown jump to light speed, and then 2 Piet Red, which is, as I said, a very well positioned deck in the meta right now. 2 Gar Saxon, 2 Kylo Ren, Kylo 5 ECL, and then Yoda also doing really well. 6 Yoda Red, False Red, as the gets are getting a little bit greedier. And Iden Data Vault still doing well here with 8 top 8 performance. So overall, a very, very healthy meta that is shifting towards going back to this set 4 meta. This is really one of the big shifts that we are seeing right now in the meta game. Is that we progressively, as weeks goes by, we're starting to see the Force decks taking a back foot, and we're seeing the new decks, the older decks coming back and forth. So I think it's that the initial hype of the Force deck kind of dying out and being slowly replaced by the older decks. And also people kind of knowing how to play against Force decks in general and this means that it brings forward the old decks that are doing well. So you see here, so if you look at all those decks here, this is a 4th throw deck, this is not 4th throw, this is 4th throw, this is not 4th throw, this is not 4th throw, this is not 4th throw. So you see, out of those top 6 deck, we'll have like about, once again, 50% of 4th throw decks, but 4th throw decks are really slowly getting less and less popular as we are moving on throughout the season, which is really good news, and it shows that the decision to not ban 4th throw by Fantasy Flight Game was indeed the correct one. We're getting to the end of this video to see an overview of the meta, but this is kind of what we're seeing here, at least for this week. So let's talk about the list that actually won the PQ this weekend. So first we're going to start with the Planetary Qualifier in New York. So it's actually one PQ that was won by Quinnland, but I didn't have the list, so I didn't include it into the video. But this one is a list by Ken Jaber running Palpatine Yellow, and he's running a lot of interesting things. He's notably running the Loth Cat, which has an when play exhaust ability, but only works on the ground. But he also, the reason that makes it the card pretty good in Palpatine is also he has a when defeated ground. So the thing that I don't like about Loth Cat is like it only works on ground units. But the fact that it can come into play, tap something, and then you can use Palpatine to sacrifice him, draw a card, and then tap something else, can be really powerful. Once again, the thing I don't like about it is like it only exhausts ground units, and we are in a meta where being able to exhaust both ground and space is very relevant, as a lot of people are playing space decks. But nevertheless, it is an interesting inclusion. We've been seeing Contracting Hunter here as a really good control 4/4 ambush unit. That's been really popular in Palpatine decks because, once again, they can ambush, do tons of damage, and then use Palp's abilities to sacrifice it and draw a card. And even if, honestly, you're using it as a removal, it's fine. The only problem is, once again, it's a relatively specialized removal. But we're in an environment where there's a lot of 2/4/2s. There are a lot of 2/4/2s in the meta, notably among those Force decks. So in this case, Contracted Hunter is really strong. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. We see the Sneak Attack, Legacy Run combo being used. Legacy Run is really good in Palpatine because you can sacrifice it at any time to trigger the ability. You only get one trigger, but it still is a powerful card. As you can see, is be run as a full playset. And the rest is pretty much what we expect from Palpatine Yellow. In the sideboard, you can see him respecting the Kylo deck with Ackbar and Parliamentarian. I don't think this deck has any answer to Ackbar and Parliamentarian. Outside of maybe No Good to Be Dead is kind of fine, but other than this, the deck has no answers to Kylo Ren, the Kylo Ren combo deck. So it needs to have some sort of outs against it. So this is why he's running this in the sideboard, and the rest of the sideboard is pretty much what you would expect once again. So now moving on to the next list, it is the Planetary Qualifier Louisville, which featured 82 players, and the winner decided to bring Anakin Force. So on the Force, on Anakin, there's been two schools of thoughts. People who like to play the false base, the people who don't like to play the false base, and both of them have been reasonably successful. So this is very much what you would expect from the Anakin deck. You have those early Force units like Secretive Sage, Yaddle, and Adigalia, which allows you to dominate the early stage of the game. And then as you move forward, you get all the great Force payoff that we know and love. Chirrut, as you can see, only being played as a 2 of. Chirrut was really an insane good card in the early stages of the meta, and he is going to be less and less important. And the reason for it is because most people who try to play aggro against Force, they want to play aggro in space. They don't want to fight with your ground. They don't want to have to deal with Chirrut. They don't have to want to deal with your Mace Windows and all that stuff. So they prefer to take the fight to the ground. And in this case, actually very interesting. Talking about Mace Window, there's actually no Mace Window in this deck. As you can see, this is very much a version of the deck that has been geared to be able to fight space. We're seeing the Red 5s, we're seeing the Jedi Starfighters in the main to deal with all those space aggro decks. So that's very interesting that they really decided that Ivan Drago has really decided to shift the deck to be able to fight more in space. He also plays the Open Fire to have the Open Fire. Really, the reason why you play Open Fire is to have this flexibility. Also plays the Shadow Point because he thinks that he's not going to be denied the Force, and he would rather play the more flexible Shadow Point over the Fail the Dragon. And you got the Rival's Fall because Rival's Fall is actually very good in this meta. So for the longest time, Rivals Fall and Fear the Dragon have been compared to one another, and for the most part, Fear the Dragon has been considered to be the better card than Rivals Fall. But it really comes down to the meta, and as of now, I think we are in a meta where finally Rivals Fall is better than Fear the Dragon. In this current meta, I think Rivals Fall is a better card. There's a lot of powerful leaders that deploys very impactful that you want to one-shot. There are a lot of expensive leaders like Kylo Ren that are really popular, so Kylo Ren is very, very sensitive to Rivals Fall. There's a lot of pilot leaders like Vader, like how's it called? Vader. Also, we see Luke being popular now. We're seeing, of course, Anakin is still a thing, and we're also seeing Han Solo. So Rivals Fall is really, really good against pilot leaders, and he's really good against anything that deploys on 6 or higher. And obviously, we're also seeing Yoda same player now. So in this environment, Rivals Fall does make a lot more sense than Fear the Dragon. So it still plays the Fear the Dragon in the sideboard, but overall, this is where we stand. So people playing less Chirrut, this is really good for Sabine. People playing less Chirrut, this is the kind of thing that she would really that Sabine really thrive in. So I think that the adjustment that people are making to the meta, it might be a good idea to play Sabine in the next upcoming weeks, seeing how the decks have been evolving to our different type of decks. So really cool list overall. Definitely an adapted version of the deck to be able to fight space. A more balanced version in order to be able to fight space is kind of like what I'm seeing here. Moving on now to the Planetary Qualifier Little Toe Co. No idea how to pronounce this. Anyway, it's a 67 player event, and this time it's the Han Green who came out on top. It's nice to see this deck having success because it's a really, really strong deck, at least in theory. It just hasn't been really well positioned in the meta. It plays all the nasty stuff that you are going to be expecting. You see the Grogu turn 1, we see the Mace Kanata to take advantage of those bodies that have very low attack value but very high health. Plays the Mace Windu, plays the Obi-Wan, plays obviously the Poe Dameron combo that allows you to play a 4-5 in space for 3 in space on turn 1. Something I'm surprised about is that he's not running the General's Blade to combo with Grogu. Maybe this combo has considered to be too risky to be worth using. But this is a balanced version. We have some Bright Hope to fight in space. We also have the Blue Leader to fight in space. So the deck is not giving up on space just like a traditional Han Blue would. Han Green has much more tools to be taking to the fight to space. Some Confiscate, which is really powerful in the current meta, and then obviously has the insane grindy late game that we know and love whenever we play green, which is the Quinnland Beck, the Yoda, and yeah. So this really, really solid deck, and we'll see also the 3 Timely Intervention. One of the advantages of playing green as well, if you can go Timely Intervention, Mace Windu is extremely powerful, but it's also powerful in a various amount of different decks. Still very powerful, of course, with Poe Dameron, and it's also very powerful with Guerrilla Attack Pod, which we're seeing here as a 2 of. So really cool deck. I also love the inclusion of 3 Grogus. I think Grogus is a really good antidote to space decks when they play a lot of space units that are very low health. You can drop a Grogu on turn 1, and then that Grogu can start picking off those space units one after the other every single turn, which can be really, really effective. So that's something that you really like to see as well. But yeah, cool deck overall. And the sideboard, we're seeing once again respecting the Kylo Ren with the Aggro Parliamentarian, the Kit Fisto as well, some Bombing Run for the space decks, the Fear the Dragon for the more mid-range decks, and a couple of Yoda's Lightsaber for the aggro matchup, really strong on those very, very healthy early game bodies, and heals you at the same time. That's exactly what you want to see. Moving on to the Planetary Qualifier Medicine, and this is the Lego Pizza, who is actually the finalist of the Galactic Championship, who is bringing back pretty much the same deck that he made the final with at the Galactic Championship. This obviously the Kylo Talking Town deck, which I feel like a lot of people are still have on their radar. There's a lot of people who are still playing the Parliamentarian sideboard. They're still respecting these decks, and as long as it's going to be so, it's going to be difficult to play Kylo Ren in that environment. With that being said, Lego Pizza being the great player he is, and maybe he, in his tournament people were not respecting his deck, or maybe he just is that good at the game that he was able to navigate all those sideboard aid, because one of the things that is very important to understand is like the choice that the Bothell Network made for this tournament. They made that they chose that deck because they knew that this deck was going to take the meta by surprise, and that people were not going to have the necessary sideboard cards to fight this deck. But now that we're in an environment where people actually do know about the deck and do know how to play against it, and usually have some sideboard card against it, playing this deck is very, very different experience. But as you can see, Lego Pizza has not made many changes to the deck. He has made the deck a little bit more capable of fighting in the grindy games. He's playing some Devastator, for example, one Rival's Fall in the main, but overall the deck has not changed that much compared to the previous version that we've seen. For example, the Armor Modi have been moved to the sideboard, so the deck is less all-in on the combo and a bit more kind of balanced. Is kind of how I would say it. So really, really cool to see it still having some success. I still think it's a really, really cool deck. And it is an historical deck for Star Wars Unlimited because it is the real first combo deck that actually is competitive in Star Wars Unlimited. It's not a gimmick, it's not a one-time thing, it's a deck that is really, really powerful, and you better have a plan if you want to play against it. Moving on to the PQ Kensington, with the first Boba Data Vault list. It won the 56-player tournament, and this list of Boba Data Vault is relatively classic. So currently, as I said in my previous Boba Data Vault video that I've made, I made a full deck about this deck. Is that you either want to play the Ruthless Raider version, or you want to play that without the droid package, or you want to play the what's it called, the Invisible Hand version that does play the droid package. And currently, the Ruthless Raider version is better. Is more played. I don't know which one is better. I personally prefer the one that plays the droid package because I'm a big fan of the Invisible Hand as a card. But once again, time will tell which version is the best. They're both really competitive and they're both really fun to play with. So, talking about this current version, there's a couple of interesting things about it. First of all, it doesn't play any droids at all. So there's a difference between not playing the droid package, but this he's not even playing any droid. So he's completely ignoring the droid aspect of it, which is fine since he's not playing Invisible Hand. He's playing NG2000, which I'm not a big fan of. I think NG2000 is good, but it's quite situational. And most people play around it. Personally, I would prefer, if you really want to play more 4-drops, I would play the shuttle. Instead, he's playing the Darth Vader. Since he's playing a full package of 2-drops in space, Vader can be really, really effective on turn 2, but it's quite situational. You need to have the space, 2-drop in space, and then curve out into Vader. You can curve out here on turn 4. You play like a Fang Fighters, and then you can play this afterwards. It can work like that too, but it's going to be a lot less powerful and a lot easier to play around. So the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. We see the Dorian gunship as the main ship that Boba is going to be deploying into. Get the Palpatine in the late game. Something I'm a little bit surprised is to see Palpatine's Return seeing play over the traditional salvage. So the reason why you're playing Palpatine's Return is because it has the option to be able to reanimate Maul and Palpatine, and you get a discount of it. And you can even reanimate Vader sometimes. But however, it is a lot worse against full throw. So I guess David thinks that he has good enough of a matchup against full throw that he doesn't need to be running a 0-cost upgrade. He doesn't actually care. He can just play what is objectively the better card, ignoring that factor, obviously. So really, really cool deck. And moving on now to the Planetary Qualifier Puerto Rico, which was a much smaller one, only 22 players. So I guess they were a Han Blue who actually made it to the win. So I don't know, maybe it was not included into the previous statistic I saw, but there's actually a Han Blue who actually won a PQ. And this version is, once again, we're seeing a lower amount of Shirut being played once again. People are starting to drop Shirut because Shirut is good, is a great card, but it really only is amazing against Sabine right now. Like, again, in other matchup, it's not that great. I think he's good in the mirror match and he's good against Sabine, but most it's mostly an anti-aggro card, and most aggro decks now are going into space. So Shirut is kind of losing a lot of its purpose now. I will still play some in the sideboard, I guess, but playing 2 instead of 3 would have been unthinkable a few months back. Same goes for Mace Windu, which is seeing lesser and lesser amount of play. He's still running the Force Lightning to enable the Anakin Skywalker, which is interesting. He's running the full package of Ogdo Bogdo, which I think is correct. I think Ogdo Bogdo is a card that, unless you're playing against Tarkin Town decks, which honestly there's 3 Tarkin Town decks in the meta, which is, and only one of those 3 decks, Quinnland, is actually seeing a lot of play. But Ogdo Bogdo is going to be so great in all the other matchup, and especially against decks that are trying to take the fight to space, that are trying to ignore what you're doing. Because Ogdo Bogdo will allow you to race as a 5-3 that is going to be very difficult to deal with for that type of deck. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. Once again, Rival's Fall, seeing some play, but he's running this time the full package of Fail the Dragon. Cool deck, respecting once again the Agrarian Parliamentarian. Run the double Tranquility as a against Heart Control. I honestly don't think Han Blue needs to be running any sort of sideboard against Heart Control. I think Han Blue is naturally a very, very strong deck against Heart Control because of the amount of card draw that the deck has. The Ki-Adi-Mundi, the Yodas, just provide so much card advantage. We got Cassian, even though he's only running 1 here. Chewbacca, there's just so much smuggle, so much card draw. It's really, really difficult for a deck to kind of outpace this. And the fact that you can play all of your units with a discount can really allow you to overwhelm the opponent and really kind of take over the game. So I think the deck is naturally very strong against card control and doesn't need more help. But he's running the double Tranquility, which is fine. It doesn't take a lot of space in the sideboard, so that's fine. Moving on to the next deck is Planetary Qualifier Vancouver with Brammer playing Kira Data Vault. This is a very, very classic version of Kira. It's almost like old school, doesn't even take into account the meta really. Like you don't really seeing much changes being made to the deck. It's very similar to this type of decks. I think even in terms of new card, it really plays very few new cards. I think he plays the Supremacy tie, which is new, which is a nice card to pick up from Vader. And then, yeah, pretty much no new card. They use 2 copies of Anakin, which is fine in this deck. It's not particularly good. It's just okay. Yeah, a pretty classic version of Kira. And Kira has not really succeeded so much in this meta. I think the reason why Kira is not doing so well is because the deck does not do very well against false decks. And it's something that most people who've played Kira have experienced, is like the deck gets outvalued by... One of the things about Kira is like it's a control deck that doesn't draw a lot of cards. I mean, it draws a lot of cards if you manage to have an uncontested Krennic, but that's pretty much the only thing that draws cards in the deck. So it's a deck that really much relies on playing superior, really, really strong plays one after the other to really take over the game. Oh, I guess there's the 3 copies of Night Sister Warrior, but this is not really card advantage because he only draws you 1 card. So the deck doesn't draw a lot of cards, and the thing is, like, whenever you play against, as I said earlier, the Ki-Adi-Mundi, all the draw engine that the false decks are capable of, you get outvalued very hard whenever you're playing Kira. So I think that that's the reason why people have been moving away from Kira. I would prefer to play Kylo because Kylo has this super strong deployment that really helps us the mid portion of the game, while Kira is basically better at staying alive. But whenever you're playing against false decks, you're more concerned about being outvalued than being outpaced. And I think in that environment, it makes more sense to play Kylo. So that's kind of my explanation on why I think Kylo is so more played than Kira. But now that the meta is, we're seeing less and less false decks, and we're also seeing fewer and fewer Talzin. Talzin is a really strong counter to Kira. Basically, whenever you're playing Kira versus Talzin, Kira cannot use our leader ability at all. Because every time you do, you get very susceptible to the -1/-1, in which case it doesn't matter how many shield you have on your units. The other very awkward thing about Kira is that Talzin is the only leader in the game that can actually deploy into Kira and attack Kira and not die. So basically, because of the -1/-1, so Kira will come at a 4/4. It will have the HP of Talzin, but Talzin can still attack, kill Kira, and not die as a result. So basically, Kira deployment is not nearly as effective as it should be, and our leader ability is non-existent. So she's basically gone as a leader versus Talzin. and that's the reason why Kira has not done so well against Talzin, because you would much rather play Kylo versus Talzin than Kira. But generally speaking, I would say Kylo is just a better leader against Force decks than Kira is. But now that we're a meta that is kind of shifting away from Force, at least a little bit, Kira is starting to become a little bit more relevant now. So we'll see how that involves. There's obviously only one PQ win, and some relatively small PQ as well with only 50 players. So it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but it is something to watch out for. Next, we got the Planetary Qualifier Zurich that happens in the Two Moon store, which are really friends of mine. I've had the chance to travel there and cast one of their PQs. And for the second time in a row now, we see Dominic winning the PQ. So I'm gonna assume that this is the same Dominic that I'm thinking of. Dom G6. I had some people will comment, but if it's confirmed that he's the person I think I know, he's the widely known as the most prolific and the best player in Switzerland. It's really good player, and he's won this time with the very classic Quinnland red. So let's talk about a little bit about his list. So I think his list is very much, this is the classic textbook Quinnland. Is running only 2 copies of Depa Belaba, which I think is fine. Yeah, this is an absolute textbook. He's running the Fennec Shen in the sideboard. So last week I was a little bit surprised by seeing so many people running Fennec instead of running like something like an Obi-Wan. And the thing is, the reason why people run Fennec apparently is because it does ambush into Anakin without dying. If you would ambush with Obi-Wan into Anakin, Obi-Wan and Anakin would actually trade because of the 5 HP of Obi-Wan, but if you're doing with Fennec, you can actually snipe Anakin without losing your Fennec. So that's kind of like the big reason, and apparently that's the main reason why people prefer to play Fennec over Obi-Wan in the sideboard, which is very sad for Obi-Wan, because you would think Obi-Wan would be an auto-include in Quinnland deck, but that's not the case at all, turns out. Moving on now to the next list is going to be Planetary Qualifier Poking again. And this time around, we have Swardo taking the win with Palpatine Yellow. Palpatine Yellow playing this time around a list that is relatively similar to the list we saw before. It dialed down a little bit the Legacy run, only 2 copies with only 1 copy of Sneak Attack. A couple of change, but the overall idea of the deck is remaining the same. There's no cats in this one, even though we still have the Seditious Crumb, of course. We'll see the Change of Hearts going back and forth into the deck, but pretty much it's the same idea of the deck. Swardo is a very well-known Palpatine Yellow player that has played the Tech Initiative. Palpatine Yellow is very much his pet decks, and so he's really good with the deck. And it's a deck that, if you want a meta where there's no aggro player, it's still amazing, but it still is a terrible deck against aggro. So this is kind of the same story for Palpatine Yellow. But it seems like Palpatine Yellow is indeed the best way to run the deck. Next, we got another Boba Fett Data Vault that is once again a pretty classic version. He's running this time a drawing package, but without with the Invisible Hand. So this is the version that runs Invisible Hand, but he runs Invisible alongside Ruthless Raider. So he's running base. He decided to notch to say, I'm going to be playing both. And he's also running the Salvage in the main deck. He won a 60-player tournament. This is the one that won the PQ in London. And yeah, so pretty cool deck overall. You got the Special Force TIE Fighter as a way to fight against, I think it's an answer to some space decks. It really helps against space decks, space aggro decks, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because it's pretty much the version I've been talking a lot about this deck already. The cool thing that I like is that because he's running Invisible and he's also running the Droid Bomber, that means he has 7 spaceships to actually deploy into with his Vader instead of 6, which is kind of neat. Anyway, cool deck, and we're moving on now to the Yoda Sensing Darkness. This is the Yoda Red, Force Red version. So basically, the main thing that Yoda got a lot of help in the Force set. Obviously, all the 2-drops, Yaddle, Secretive Sage, which are really excellent, but it's pretty much the same, and it kind of puts your opponent in kind of a position where your opponent is either going to decide to kill your true drop, in which case you can play You're My Only Hope on turn 2, and then you can drop an insanely big unit on turn 2, which is great. Or your opponent decides to not kill it, and then you get the Force, and you get to do all the cool Force things, like playing Chirrut, playing Ki-Adi-Mundi, and all that stuff. Once again, only 2 copies of Chirrut again in this deck. This would have been absolutely unthinkable a couple of weeks back. And obviously the big thing that Yoda got from the new set is the new Ray. So the new Ray does 2 important things for this deck. The first thing that he does is provide a 5-drop that you can get for your My Only Hope. So whenever you get My Only Hope, you get the Ray into play, and that's really powerful. Because it gives you like more. It's not the best 5-drop to get, obviously, but it's a nice one. But obviously, the main reason why you have Ray in the deck is because of the ability to deal 2 damage to an enemy unit and 2 damage to base whenever you draw it. And obviously, because Yoda is able to draw a lot of cards throughout the game, you are able to draw a lot of cards from Yoda. So basically, the way you're supposed to use it is you're gonna use Yoda's ability. You're gonna put it back on top of the deck. You're gonna draw a card, put a card on top of the deck, and then you're gonna draw a card, and then you're gonna be able to deal the damage. So it's a little bit easier to use in Yoda than is in other decks, where on other decks you are purely victim of randomness. In my opinion, it's still very difficult to trigger Ray with Yoda. From my experience playing the deck, it's pretty much just something that if it happens, it's amazing, but it's not something that you really plan on doing like so much throughout the game. I also find it's very surprising that he's only playing 1 copy of Owen Lars, because in my opinion, Owen Lars is by far the most reliable way to actually use Ray's ability, because obviously Owen's die, you look at the top 5 decks, and then you get to pick up Ray, and then you get to trigger this from there. And Owen is just an amazing card in general. It's really helpful against aggro, so I would actually totally play Owen Lars into Ray if I was playing this deck. But the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from that color combination. We'll see the C-3PO for the combo with Yoda for extra card draw. We see the Air Squadron X-Wings for once again unconditional card draw in order to get the Ray thing going and get the You're My Only Hope, obviously. And get some constructed lightsaber as well, which can be quite nice in combination with Night Sister Warrior or Secretive Sage to give them Sentinels. Because if you're playing this on a non-heroism unit, you actually do get Sentinels, which is much better than Restore in my opinion, especially when you play this on a shielded unit like Secretive Sage, or a unit that gives you something that it does like Night Sister Warrior. Cool deck. So we're moving on now to the Planetary Qualifier Santiago, who had 107 players. That was in Chile, so very nice to see some triple-digit tournaments taking place outside of Europe and outside of the US. It might actually be, I don't actually recall any other triple-digit tournament that happened in South America, so this might be the first one, so really nice to see that. This one was won by Zvast, and he was running a Quinnland Talking Town deck. Again, the version is relatively classic. We're only seeing like the X3-34 land speeders being played. Really good combination with Quinnland Talking Town can kill anything that's 3 HP right from turn 1 and sometimes survive. It's really good against those 2 shielded units, which overall the deck fears a lot, because you can kind of ping them over, remove the shield, and then ambush into them, and you will have the kill and you will have the 2-3 surviving as well. So you have to be very mindful of this whenever you are running against the Quinnland deck, that if he does this, it's a really big advantage that he's obtained right from the beginning of the game. So really strong against those 2-2, those Secretive Sage, which is currently one of the most played cards in the game. So I was really right in putting this the best card in Legion of the Force, looks like. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you expect. Dominion Falcon as a one-of as another smuggle card. And we're moving on now to the next deck, which is Albertom, who won at the PQ Shanghai, still struggling to pull up the big numbers. You're only small PQs, 24 players, managed to win with Mother Talzin. Mother Talzin has not been so popular after Worlds, because I think the reason why it's not super popular is because it's very difficult to play. I know this because, of course, I saw the difference of results that a player that was really trained like Baton was having with the deck, someone who grinded the deck so much, and I could see the difference with someone like, for example, Tim, who just pick up the deck a couple of weeks before Worlds, and I could see the difference on how good the deck was performing. And we're talking about T85 Tim, who is a really, really good player. And even he was struggling with the deck, I would say, because obviously it's a very, very difficult deck to play. So I knew already going into the season, and something that the Super Racers have said as well, is that we already knew going into the season that despite Talzin being the championship winner deck, we knew the deck was not going to be very popular because it's so incredibly difficult to play. It has loads of, every single turn of the game, it has loads of different lines of play that you have to play perfectly, and it's a deck that if you played well, it doesn't give you a huge advantage over the opponent. Like, it's not like an amazing deck that beats everything. It's a deck that does have a significant amount of weaknesses. So it's a deck that you have to put a lot of effort into to master. And when you do master it, it's a really powerful deck. It's one of the best decks in the game. But it's still not the deck that's going to give you a super big edge over the opponent. So overall, it's a lot of work, and the reward for it is not necessarily the best. So this is something that's really, really clearly kind of messed up with this deck. So what can you say about this version? It's not so different from the version that the Super Racer were running. We're seeing the Perch Trooper being here. We're seeing the Arm to the Teeth, the Ultra D4 blasters, and we're seeing even the Ki-Adi-Mundi making it into the sideboard. So it's really, we're seeing the same kind of cards being played compared to the Super Racer version. One thing that's different though is like he's not playing the Sun, and he's running 3 copies of Devastator in the main. And in my opinion, this is 100% wrong. So the cool thing about Devastator, right, is that you can force yourself to deal 8 damage with Devastator, which is nice. But I think that the Sun is an amazing card in this deck. I think you should 100% play the Sun if you're playing this deck, because it's a huge body that has an immediate impact on the game. You can +2 attack to all of your unit if you have the Force, which you pretty much always do in this deck, especially that late in the game. It's just such a powerful card, and it's still a very good card to force yourself into. So for example, he's playing like predisposition here. Maybe you should try to make space for some of the Sun. I think this card is so good. Anyway, cool. Otherwise, it's pretty much what you expect. He's also running Bombing Run, so really respecting the. Even though I feel like Bombing Run, the problem I have with Bombing Run, right, is that it's something we talked about actually with the Super Racers with Beton before the Worlds. Is like it's already a card that you already are kind of favored into Vader Yellow. You don't really actually need Bombing Run, but I guess it's really good against other space decks like Han Solo. So that would help in this matchup. But is that deck popular enough to warrant 3 cards in your sideboard? I don't know. Moving on now to the Planetary Qualifier Odense in Denmark, 70 players, and this one was won by Quinnland. This deck is very similar to the one we saw. This is really similar to the one Wu was running. He's running the Quinnland. He's running the Spark of Rebellion main. Yeah, it's a deck we've seen. I think the only change he made compared to the Wu's version is like he's running 1 Fang Fighters in the main and 1 less Quinnland. That's pretty much the only difference. So yeah, pretty much a deck that we've seen before. Moving on, we got the Planetary Qualifier Tour, which was the biggest PQ of the weekend. 126 players, and it was won by Boba Data Vault by Maddie Kinatbox. And he was running a pretty classic version of the deck, the version that runs the Ruthless Raider, runs the Shuttle ST-148, is running the Salvage in the main to play around 4 throws, so he's really much respecting the 4th throw shenanigans. And yeah, he's running the Vaders to get into the TIE Bomber into Vader. Not super consistent, as I said earlier, but when it works, it's really strong. He's running the IG-2000 on top of the Shuttle, so he's running a lot of 4-drops. A lot of 4-drops, yeah. Despite running the full ramp as well, he's also running the all 6 ramps. So yeah, it's just a different mix of the same card that we've been seeing over and over again for this deck. So even though there's no established list and there's a lot of different lists, they all kind of play the same card but kind of mix in different ways. He's really respecting very highly the Kylo Ren combo deck. He's running 3 Aggregate Parliamentarians in the sideboard, identifying that this is a weakness for the deck. Next, I'm really excited to see that during the Planetary Qualifier São Paulo, we got Dio Gonzo managed to win the PQ with Admiral Ackbar, probably the leader that surprised me the most last set in set 4, and he's coming back in set 5 with a new deck. So I had to zoom in on this card. I actually forgot what this does. It's a 1/4 for 1. You can exhaust it and then you get to attack with a droid, and his droid attack with 3 or 4 attacks. I don't quite remember. So this card is really, really good in this deck because the Ackbar deck is all about sticking unit on the board, making those units and keeping those units alive, so that he can use and abuse the ability by exhausting his own unit to generating a board. So it's a deck that really benefits from basically having a board that is very resilient unit. And the new set gave us a lot of those cards. So it gives us this card, which is so you can now go for double 1/4 openings on turn 1, which is really, really powerful. You can also you also have the Republic Y-Wing, so you really can very easily go for double super high health 1-drop opening, making it super. Even if your opponent is playing a very heavy control deck, he's gonna have a very hard time getting rid of the board, which means that you're gonna be able to provide loads of value from Ackbar. And then once you get a big enough of a board, then you basically win the game. So it's actually interesting, but he doesn't actually play the payoffs that you would expect for having a big board. And usually you would run the squadron that basically become +2/+2 for +1/+1 for each space unit. But in this case, it's because he's playing a lot on the ground. So he's really, and he's also not playing the other payoffs, which is he's not running the reinforcement, the timely reinforcements. It's not timely reinforcement. It's I forgot the name, but it's a 5-cost unit that puts a bunch of X-wing depending on the amount of resource your opponent has. He's not playing that card, which is reinforcement something combined with Biggs. No, not Biggs. Wedge. Sorry. So that's the Wedge reinforcement combo that the old Ackbar decks were playing. This deck is not playing it. So there's very, very interesting take on the deck. It's much more ground-based. And he's not really playing all the payoffs for kind of swarming the ball. He's really trying to go for the fatigue, where he's really trying to outvalue his opponent by just generating tokens every turn. So it's really, really interesting take on the deck. And I would love to give it a try. As you can see, the sideboard is really heavily against Kylo. We see 3 Grand Parliamentarians, 3 Bamboozle. Clear the Field is against token decks, I guess, and a Bright Hope against space decks, space aggro decks. So very, very interesting take on the deck. Because not only, of course, is he playing Ackbar Data Vault, he's also playing a version that is not the same as the one we used to see. Before we get into our spicier decks, let me tell you that you can pick up Planetary Bombardment for €15 on Card Market. A card that has recent popularity, of course, because of Boba, so want to pick up that card. Moving on to the spicier decks. We're going to start off with... We're going to start off with this Thrawn ECL deck. So this deck is pretty awesome. So I think actually Thrawn is one of the most underrated deck in the game. It's a very, very powerful deck that is able to provide an absurd amount of value with Cult Veins. The Cult Veins is even playing out of aspect Lord Wolf, which is kind of cool. Even keep in mind though that even if you do, so you do actually get to play the Lost Wolf for free from Cap Veins, which is really nice. Provide a little bit of protection against aggro, which this deck desperately need. It also provides with some heroism units that's going to make your Anakin Skywalker stronger. I guess you don't even have to play the Lost Wolf, you can just leave it in your discard in order to make the Anakin stronger. You can also do that. So the whole point, it's a value deck that is able to provide insane amount of value. Now with Owen Lars, you draw 1 million cards. The deck does play enough force unit to make this work between the Night Sister Warrior, the Kia di Mundi, the Anakin Skywalker, the Vader. It gives you more chances to find your Vader, and you can go Vader ECL or Vader Timely Intervention, which the deck played both of it. It has the potential to clear the only 2 copies of Overwhelming Barrage is a bit surprising because I would assume Barrage to be quite strong in this deck. I guess. Then we play, of course, No Glaring Result, which is amazing with Thrawn. It's just a really, really sweet deck. We get the Chimera to re-trigger those one defeated effect. But really the star of the deck is really the Cobb Vance. The amount of value that this card provides in this deck is just completely absurd. Yeah, it's a really, really cool deck. The only problem that I have with Thrawn, and this is the same problem I have with all the Thrawn Green decks, is that they're terrible against aggro. The problem against aggro is that you have a very, very strong value engine, but that value engine doesn't matter when your opponent wants to kill you by turns 5, turn 6. Especially this version that plays only 25 HP, you have no leader, it gets a lot of aggro decks, you're not going to have your leader deploy by the time your leader deploy comes late, and it's not even that impactful. Your Vader ECL only is coming too late, your Grand Myth one is coming too late, everything is just coming too late in this deck. You're ramping, you're making value, but you're not dealing with the board. You have some Paradox Merciless Contest, which aggro decks have no problem navigating around. It's just not a good deck against aggro. It just almost auto lose to aggro. And now you're only playing 2 copies of Barrage, so you don't even have a clear way to kind of stabilize the game when you come to turn 4. That is just miserable. So this is really the problem I have with this deck, is like it's really bad against aggro. So it's kind of in the similar realm as Palpatine, where if you're not playing against aggro decks, as Palpatine, where if you don't play against aggro deck, it's a really strong deck, but if you don't, then the deck really feels bad. So you get you get the Purgle dude against space aggro, which is fine, but even in the sideboard, it seems like he has pretty much just given up on trying to fighting aggro, even after sideboard. You can see all these cards are just more stuff against control. I can't even like Relentless, bro. You don't really need. Do you really need Relentless, bro? You've got so much value. Like, how can you lose to control? So he's playing Malevolence, which is kind of a neat way to kind of trigger all of your exploits and stuff. But the problem is, like, most of the exploit triggers don't really actually help against aggro. Once again, you get the healing coming from the Onyx Squadron, but then every other kind of when defeated effect is just like card draw, more value, ramp. Those are not going to be stuff that's going to help you against aggro. So it's this is the problem of the deck, is like it's really much, at least I would say the yellow version at least has the sneak attack, the sneak attack legacy run that is really strong against aggro because it comes early enough and it really wipes the board. This version does not. The green version does not have that. So that's the thing. Moving on now to this Admiral Trench deck. The Admiral Trench Blue. This deck is the absolute nemesis of any hard control deck. It's the deck that if you are playing as hard control, it's gonna auto win against all the hard control. Against other deck, the deck is not really doing well, and it's just such a. And that's the reason why I think the only context in which it makes sense to be running this deck is if you're going to a large tournament, and you basically want to take a draw fairly early on in a round, and then you game into this weird alternative universe where you're playing other hard control decks because you are basically on the draw bracket against other decks that had a draw, and usually decks that have draws are control decks. And then you basically just ride this until the end of the tournament. I think this is the only reliable way to have a result with this deck. You get a leader that has a leader's ability that has no impact on the board. The deployment comes relatively late and costs resources, which is horrible. The rest of the deck doesn't have a lot of cheap removal. All the removals are fairly expensive single target removal. Loads of cards that are just completely not helpful against aggro. Yeah, I don't see how can this win. So he has the evacuate bounty hunter crew combo. So you go evacuate, you reset the board, you play bounty hunter crew, you get evacuate back into your hand, and you repeat that over and over again. It's kind of neat, but it's very, very slow. Once again, even playing Search Your Feelings, bro, this deck is just wild. He's running 3 restock. Do you really need 3 restock? No, I don't know. This is wild. So yeah, this is pretty much the bane of any out control decks. I Am Your Father, which is really nice into those hand decks because you're almost always going to take the 7 damage, so then it becomes like a 7 damage for 3, which is nice. But against aggro, it's really bad. It's unplayable. So yeah, I don't see how can this win against aggro, but it's a deck that if you're on a very control heavy meta, it's really strong. Moving on now to another Boba Fett, but this one is a Boba Yellow. That's what I wanted to showcase it in this video. I've talked a lot of shit about this, about Han Yellow. And obviously one top 8 performance is not going to change my mind on this deck, but wanted to showcase that pretty much what I always said about this deck, and the reason why I'm not a big fan of it, is that it's too much leaning towards the aggro plan. It's whenever you're playing the Boba Daredevil deck, the idea is that you're either going to be playing aggro whenever your opponent put damage on his base, and you're going to be going control whenever you put damage on your unit. The problem of the yellow version is like it doesn't really have the option to go control, because the yellow is just a very aggressive color in general. So you get all the cards that you get from this deck, whether it's Surprise Strike, whether it's the Fire Spray, whether it's Guerrilla Soldiers, all those cards are pushing your deck towards the direction of playing aggro. And unfortunately that doesn't always work well, and it's difficult because you're not playing Barrage. It's not always easy to take advantage of your opponent just putting a bunch of damage on his units. So, cool decks. There's a couple of things that are a little bit puzzling. I find it weird that he's only playing 2 copies of General Pride. I guess yellow does give you better 2-drops in general, but I still think General Pride is a must-have. It's so good whenever you're playing first. It's ridiculous. I also find it surprising only 2 copies of TIE Bomber. Also relatively surprising. Actually, he doesn't really play that many turn 1 plays. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Only 8 turn 1 play. That is wild. Am I missing something? Wow. Only 2 proactive turn. That is wild. Okay, so that is really, really weird. And then only 2 copies of Fire Spray is also weird. This card for me is the number 1 reason to be playing the yellow version. So why would you only play 2 copies? Also only 2 copies of Fett Fire Spray is also very puzzling. This card is so good in this deck. I guess you got all the options, but is this really better than Fett Fire Spray? I don't think so. Yeah, some really puzzling choices here. Anyway, it did well. It did top 8 in a PQ. Moving on now to a Krennic deck. So I wanted to showcase Krennic because Krennic is actually a pretty decent deck right now. Pretty underestimated because obviously you got the Vader ECL combo, and this deck, the fact that you're playing ECL makes the deck leans toward the more mid-rangey version of the deck instead of the control version, and Krennic really likes that because Krennic has always traditionally been more of a mid-rangey version of the black-green blue shell compared to Kira and Kylo and Iden. So couple of things that surprised me about this version. What surprises me is that we don't see the 3/3 for 2. I mean, I guess it's really bad against Tarkin Town. Also it's playing 54 cards, which is wrong, obviously. And then yeah, other than this, he's playing really, really good. Obviously Krennic has the best Vader in the game. So you get yourself the Death Trooper. You can also get the 3/3 Sentinel, which is great. He prefers to play the Calculated Magma Guard over the 5/3 Dark Trooper, which I respect. And then the rest is pretty much, he's playing a couple of card that I haven't seen in a very long time. I actually forgot the name. It's called Rook. This card I haven't seen in a very, very long time. What I like about this card is like it's a good ECL target, but would you ever play this ECL this over ECLing your Vader? Very rarely would you so. I'm not a big fan of playing cards that are so obviously dependent on ECL whenever you're ruining Vader, because you really very rarely would you ever want to ECL into a Rook whenever you're getting into Vader just the turn after. For me, it's either you're using ECL super early on in the game to get ahead against aggro, you're doing an ECL Death Trooper because you need to stay alive against aggro, or you are basically holding on it for Vader. But very rarely would I ever ECL a Rook, especially whenever you have all the great 5-drop options like Barrage or Craving Power, knowing that it's going to deny me the opportunity to play Vader on 6. So obviously there's cases where that's correct to do that, but very rarely would that be the case. And obviously Rook without ECL is kind of terrible. So I'm not a big fan of that choice, but that's pretty much it for the deck. I love the Corvus. I think in the space heavy meta, Corvus is very strong, and you need to have a good ECL target whenever you're playing against all space decks, and Corvus is definitely that. So, next I wanted to showcase the deck of Ysera from Team Enigma. He's been working on this Ray Daredevil deck. You know that Ysera is the inventor of the Ray Daredevil deck, at least he's the person who popularized the deck. And he's trying to bring it back to the set. So what can I say about Ray Daredevil? So I actually very early on in the set, I thought Ray Daredevil was going to be a very strong force to be reckoned with, because the deck just was already a very powerful deck in the previous meta, and now it became a lot stronger because it has so many new cards that really fit well into the deck. But it turns out that in the value, the Ray Daredevil deck was just not doing well against other Force decks. But this time around, things are a little bit different, because once again, we're seeing Force decks seeing a little bit less play, and that opens up Ray Daredevil some options for it to see play again. So the version that Ysera is playing is very weird, as you can expect. Only 2 copies of Gungi. He's actually not running the lightsaber. I think there's too many people playing Power Dark Side for this to be good anymore, I feel like. And also a lot of people playing anti-upgrade, so Ysera is completely ignoring upgrades for this deck, not running the General's Blade, as I was saying. He's running the Watto, which he admitted was very situationally good. And we talked about it after, and he told me that the Watto would probably be replaced by something else. He's also running 64 card, which is obviously wrong. But that's Ysera, so you're not going to tell him not to do that. He's running the full package of Rival's Fault and the full package of Fellow Dragon. Rival's Fault, as I said, very, very good in the current meta. Yeah, he's running a lot of interesting cards. He's running Alliance Dispatcher, which can be really, really good against those space aggro decks that completely ignores your bolts, so then it allows you to get basically a free ramp per return, which is super helpful. He's running he's not running enough Jedi to justify playing Owen Lars, so he's running the good old Moisture Farmer, which is also a good card against those kind of aggro decks, where the game plan for Ysera in those kind of matchup is just to put a bunch of units with Restore, which he does have plenty of, and kind of race from there. And then obviously Quinnland Beck is an amazing addition to the deck. So he's playing the Russian Doll strategy, where he can go Om1 into Quinnland Beck. He also has Quinnland Beck into Ackbar, which is a really, really nice combination that we don't see often, but I think is very powerful. So yeah, in super late game, he can go Obi-Wan into Quinnland Beck into 3 drops, and he can even go with U-Wing. He has like plenty of copies of Luke Skywalker, Quinnland Beck. And yeah, the deck is really solid. He's still playing the value Mon Mothma that he loves with the value engine. So the value engine here is completely insane, but it's also very slow. And I think that's been the problem, because it seems like Force decks are capable of kind of providing the same amount of value, at least not as much value, but more than enough for most of the games you're going to be playing in. And as a result, but are able to be a lot more tempo oriented, are able to put a lot more pressure. The Ray decks is really, really value focused, but it's very, very slow. So I'm not sure whether this deck is still going to be good. We also talked a little bit about his sideboard. He's playing a lot of Space World sideboard. He's playing both Graceful Purgle and Grappling Guardian. The Graceful Purgle is for the is obviously for the Space Aggro decks. You get a 2/7 that you can upgrade into a 3/8, which makes a huge difference, by the way. The fact that you can put experience on it makes a huge difference. It's kind of like a big Bright Hope. Against Space, you go like turn 2 Blue Leader, turn 3 Bright Hope, turn 4 Graceful Purgle. It's going to be very difficult for an enemy Space Aggro decks to fight against this. And then the Grapple Guardian is basically an answer that he had against those giant leader because the Grapple Guardians can actually deal with leaders. So it's a really great answer to those leader pilots that have been roaming around. And then yeah, that's pretty much the deck. And to make the deck even more invincible against Hard Control, he's running Restock. And also something to understand with Restock is that Restock can actually be used against the opponent, so it's also very helpful against the against Kylo Ren. So if you want to beat Kylo Ren, Restock is another card that is both useful against Hard Control and can also beat Kylo as well. So if you in a lot of decks, if you're running a deck that is not a very aggressive deck, probably playing Restock over aggro and parliamentarians is a better choice. If you're running something more tempo or aggro focus, probably better to run the aggro parliamentarian because it gives you a 2/2. But if you're running a deck that is slower, maybe the Restock is better because it will also work in other matchups. Moving on, we got this very interesting Iden Versio, that is a red Iden Versio, which is sort of like a traditional old school Hard Control deck. It plays a lot of white cards to make Anakin work, but the problem is that those cards don't really go in the discard pile. The tech is going to be resourced, and the Stella Guerrera doesn't really go in the discard pile right away, but she does die quite easily. She also obviously is an insane amount of card advantage, but she does so at the cost of costing life, and also she's out of aspect, meaning that she's not going to come into play before the Anakin comes out. So I'm not really buying this combination so much. I don't think this is particularly exciting. And the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from a red-black, black-blue control deck. I think it's worse than Bosk. I think if Bosk would be stronger than this, but it's an interesting take on the deck, and it did top 8, so needed to highlight this. 3 out of aspect bounty on crew, by the way, for the Mirror of Hard Control, which is wild. That is wild. Like, he's so heavily teched. So this is something I really don't like. I really don't like anything about this list, to be honest. I don't like the out of aspect card he's playing. I don't think it combines particularly well with Anakin. I don't like the fact that he's running Iden over Bosk. I think Bosk is still an infinitely better leader in that color combination than Iden is. And I also think that the amount of sideboard card that he has against Hard Control is just absurd. So 3 Bounty Hunter Crew and 2 Restock, which is almost only against Hard Control. I guess the Restock can be sided against Kylo, as I explained earlier. But the problem is, like, whenever you're running the Hard Control mirror, and something I explained many times, is that most of the time, the game 2 doesn't matter. Because what's going to happen is, you're going to be able to play a very long game 1, and then, after the end of game 2, play a very long game 1, and then you're going into game 2, and most of the time you don't actually get to finish game 2. Once again, there are exceptions, and sometimes you get to play 2 games, but most of the time you don't. And even if you do manage to win game 2, you're not going to be able to, your sideboard is not going to matter. Like, all you get is going to get, you're going to get a draw. So I think the best strategy is, if you think you're going to be in an environment where there's going to be a lot of Hard Control, put your sideboard card you put against Hard Control, you put them in your main. And the thing is, like, he already has tech and Restock, which is, like, those are already Hard Control tech. He already has, like, a lot of stuff against Hard Control already. I don't feel like he needs to add more. And the thing is, like, how often is that going to be relevant? Because how often am I going to be able to get through a game 2, and actually is that game 2 actually going to matter for the final score of the game? My answer is very rarely. So obviously with 3 Bounty Hunter Crew, the mirror match becomes and 3 Restocks, the mirror match becomes extremely easy. But how often is that gonna matter? Because even if you have all the greatest anti-Hard Control mirror techs in the world, the game is still gonna take forever. So are you really gonna be able to finish the game for this to matter? My answer is probably not. Most likely not. That's why it's a lot of wasted sideboard slots that could be used for many other things. Moving on, we got a double red Sabine list, which is always nice to see some double red deck having some success, because double aspect decks have not been very popular since the beginning of set 4. Even set 4 was not very popular, and set 5 even less so. So it's nice to see double aspect deck having a little bit of success. Double yellow deck have basically completely disappeared from the surface of Earth. And yeah, double green have always been bad. Double blue are not seeing play either. And double red having a little bit of success is kind of a revenge, because double red used to be the least popular double aspect card. Double aspect color. But once again, their success is still very, very sparse. FFG simply has not given us any real reason to play double aspect outside of the original 4 double aspect legendary that we got from Spark of Rebellion. This deck though does feature some interesting ones. We see the Twice the Price, which I think is a really, really good card and can really surprise some opponents. The Chaos of War, which is a really good finisher. And then the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from a Sabine double red. We'll see some out of aspect Rebel Assault, which I think is very strong. And yeah, it's quite balanced between ground and space, but the most important units are in space, so it's mostly a space deck. And we've seen a deck like this having some success last week, and it's having success again, so it's nice to see it. Moving on now to this list of Podamron. So it's a Podamron that is fairly classic, but he has a couple of cool things. So he's playing the Eject this time around. I still don't understand. I'm not a Poe player, so I don't really know what's the answer. But I've seen some people playing Eject, some people don't play Eject. So I'm really confused. Is Eject good or not? If you're a Poe player, please let me know in the comments which situation you would play Eject, which situation would you not play Eject. He's also running some interesting card like the I Hate This Ship, which is obviously a very strong combination with the Radis. So Radis is really nice because it can be, if you played earlier, it can be a really strong finisher. And it actually does have Sentinel in its deck because your Podamron is resistant. So it's going to be 8/6 Sentinel. That puts a lot of pressure on the board. And this is obviously a Daily Vault Podamron, so it's definitely more mid-rangey, so can definitely afford to play some more mid-range card like Radis. Especially when you get the discount with I Hate This Ship, making this card really, really strong against those sort of like all space decks. So really, really cool deck overall. Yeah, really, really cool deck. And now that we're done with all the deck list, I'm going to go through the overall meta. And as you can see, Quinnland is definitely the best deck in the game. Han Blue Force is still is now the second best deck instead of being the first, but it's losing market share, but it's still hanging on there. And I would be surprised if any deck would go over it because there's such a 3% lead compared to the Data Vaults. That's a very, very big difference. That's a very big gap between those two decks. Boba Data Vault is now the third most successful deck of the set, which is insane. That's a lot. It's the most success the deck has ever received. Sabine ECL has not seen any play this week, and I think that if Sabine ECL had seen more play, we wouldn't see as many Boba Fett Data Vault. I think that Sabine ECL is one of the best deck against Boba Data Vaults. If you want to counter Boba Data Vault, simply just play Sabine. It's Boba Data Vault does not do well against Aggro. Generally speaking, red, green, black decks don't do well against Sabine, and Boba Fett is no exception to that. Iden green still hanging on there in a strong position, and as you can see here, the Force Throw decks are not really that high anymore. We see there's two Force Throw decks are the two once again occupying the two first spots, but then after this is not Force, not Force, not Force. This one has Force Throw. This one doesn't. This one doesn't. This one has. This one does. So if you tally everything here, we are 23%. 23 plus 6, 29 plus 3. We got 30%. Probably a couple more down the line, but basically we went from a 50% fourth throw decks meta to sort of like a 35% fourth throw meta. There's a huge setback, and this is trending downward. So it is possible that it's keep on getting worse and worse over time. And as you can see here, the meta in terms of percentages is actually even better than set 4 meta. I don't know that was possible, but set 5 meta currently is looking to be even more towards the 4th throw meta. So everybody was kind of freaking out about 4th throw, saying 4th throw needs to be banned. I'm really happy. I've been very conservative about 4th throw. To be fair, I was not expecting 4th throw to lose that many market share, but it's currently doing so, and it was 100% the right decision from Fantasy Flight Games to not ban the 4th throw, because as you can see, with the 4th throw meta, we are seeing the healthiest meta we've ever seen in Star Wars Limited, even healthier than the Daredevil meta in terms of market percentage. We'll see if it continues to trend towards this, but if you continue on the same trend of Force deck taking a bit of a backward seat, we're going to see the meta balance itself even more. So that's going to be very interesting to see. So I'm really glad they didn't ban it. At the beginning, I was kind of like, as I said in my video, I was kind of like, I'll be fine either way. But now, retrospectively, now that I'm seeing how the meta is trending, it is clear that that fall throw is not as big of an issue as some people were making it to be. So it's really nice to see, and looks like we're going to be getting through the set 4 meta without any bans, which is good, because almost every set now we've had a ban. In set 4 we had a ban. In set 5 we didn't have a ban, but we did ban some set 5 stuff retroactively, sort of. We did ban DJ kind of retroactively in set 4. So we did have a ban on set 3 because that was a Boba ban. So it's been a very long time since we went through an entire set without having any bans. So that's really, really positive for the game. It means that the game can kind of balance itself out. Trust the players, trust the meta, and don't always jump into conclusion is the lesson of the day. And it's great to see such a healthy meta. It's very, very open. Some people don't like super wide open meta like this because it makes the game feel very random. And it does sometimes feel a bit random because you can kind of face anything, and it's really difficult to make meta calls when the meta is that wide open. So there is some downside to this, and not everybody loves super open meta like this. But I would say the majority do. It's really great to know that you can kind of there's a wide variety of different decks you can choose from. Even more diverse in terms of playstyle compared to set 4, because we actually have a combo decks now that is meta, which is really awesome. And at the end of the day, you can kind of play whatever you want, and you know you're going to be, if you know how to play the deck, you have a chance to be very successful. And that's really, really good for the game. Thank you so much for listening to that video, and I'll see you next time.